Our KVK3 is coming to a close in just under 6 days, and it is time for a KVK3 update. And spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you about what I really don't like about KVK3, so stick around. What's up everybody, Psych out here with another Rise of Kingdoms video. Look, KVK3, our KVK3 closes in about 6 days, and I promised to give some updates on how things were going. Unfortunately, this KVK3 ended up being pretty uneventful, and I'll explain why here as we go through. Just as a reminder for everybody, there's two different camps in KVK3. There's the light side, there's the darkness side. We were on the darkness side. And our allies or our opponents were on the light side. So it's a 4v4. That's one of the beauties of KVK3 is that it's a 4v4. The other beauty of KVK3 is everybody gets to Kingsland. There's all of people starting in that far zones and working their way, and all of the kingdoms get to Kingsland. And there's a big fight there to decide the winner of the KVK. And that all sounds really good. But there is a huge problem with KVK3, and that is that there is just not that much fighting. And so you fight in the altars and you fight in the ruins, and I'm going to zoom out here onto the map to show a little bit about what I mean, just to remind folks. We started, we started out here in this zone, in the top right zone, or sort of top left zone here. And we worked our way down, and as we worked our way down, we fought in these ruins. Where are the ruins? Somewhere around here. Okay, so there's one of the ruins. There's the other ruin. So we fought in those two ruins, and then we also fought our opponents from Kingdom 39 in this altar. Things were going okay. We lost a ruins fight, I think, at one point, but we also won a dark altar fight. It was pretty good, but again, these altar and ruins fights only last maybe a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours for dark altar. So there's really not a whole lot of fighting that happens until you get to Kingsland, and Kingsland is where all the big fighting happens. The big problem here is, unlike KVK2, where there are days and days of fighting. In KVK2, when the level 4 passes open up, there's lots of fighting. When the level 5 passes open up, there's lots of fighting. And you could fight for days after those level 5 passes open up until Kingsland opens, and there can even still be fighting once Kingsland open up in KVK2. In Heroic Anthem, there's tons and tons of fighting. In Strife of the 8, there is tons of fighting. Unfortunately, in KVK3, that's all the fighting you do. You fight in the ruins, you fight in the altars. You really only need one march, so there's not a lot of killing action going on in those battles. And then you get to Kingsland. And unfortunately, if you can't be there on Kingsland Day, it really hurts your ability to do much to contribute to the kingdom. And unfortunately as well, in my case, I was not able to be there on Kingsland. It actually ended up opening up on the absolute worst possible day it could for me. The only day for weeks and even months where I could not take a vacation from work. I had to be in work all day long, all night long that day, and had no chance of getting online. So unfortunately, I didn't get to fight in Kingsland. By the time I got home, got online, the battle for Kingsland was already over. Now let's talk about why that is. What exactly happened in this KVK? Because there's some weird stuff going on here. Typically in KVK3, after the Kingsland battle is fought, and our opponents won, and I'll show that here in a second, people can push out of the level 8 passes. And what you do is you push back into your enemy zone. You push back into their zone 6, you push into their zone 5, and then you can push ultimately into their zone 4s, capturing their Crusader fortresses. That's the way a typical KVK3 might work. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, you can see that we are still here in zone 6. I'm right next to Kingsland. My city's right. How is this possible if we lost KVK? Well, the deal was we lost KVK. We lost the Kingsland battle, and we negotiated. We basically said, hey, look, okay, you guys win. You can have the Great Ziggurat, all this stuff. Let's make a deal. And our kingdom leaders made some deals and got some rewards divided up. I don't know how all that worked. I didn't have anything to do with that. And so so here we are. We haven't fought since Kingsland. There hasn't been any fighting since Kingsland. And that has real consequences for things like Crusader Achievement Awards. And I'm going to show my awards here in a little bit. But before I get into that, I want to talk about what exactly happened in Kingsland. How did we lose Kingsland? And the real big picture story here is we lost Kingsland because by the time Kingsland opened up, unfortunately, only 2.5 of our kingdoms were able to fight in Kingsland. And I say 2.5 because our kingdom, Kingdom 50, and I'm going to zoom in here to show you just to remind you what the kingdoms are. Let me pull up the camp tab here. So our kingdom, Kingdom 50, and it was also Kingdom 43, I believe, were the 43, I think, was in the bottom left. Is that right? Let me double check on that, actually. I don't want to get this wrong if it's not 43. 43 might have been in the bottom right. Let me just bottom right. And Kingdom 43, again, I wasn't in these conversations, but my understanding is they basically said, we want all of these circles. We want to capture all the circles. We don't want you, Kingdom 40, to have any. And that's really unusual. Usually you split up the circles with your allies. It's particularly unusual because Kingdom 43 was the weakest kingdom by power going into the KVK. So it was a little strange that they demanded such high-level rewards when I've never heard of that happening. None of us had ever heard of that before. And Kingdom 40 basically said no, and they said, that's it, we're going to war. They started attacking Kingdom 40. Kingdom 40, who you might remember was one of our enemies in KVK2, is now our ally in this KVK, basically beat them back. They beat them all the way back into their starting zone. But unfortunately, that meant by the time Kingsland opened up, Kingdom 40 basically had nobody left. They had no resources left. They had no troops left. And it just really left Kingdom 50 and 51 to try to fight out with a little bit of Kingdom 40. Kingdom 40 did come into Kingsland for a little bit to try to help, but it didn't last long. The fighting lasted less than 8 hours, and Kingsland was over. So unfortunately, that wasn't a lot of fun. It wasn't fun for me because I didn't get to be there. I couldn't be there for any of the fighting, any of the action, and it didn't last very long. And that's the real problem with KVK3 is the fighting ends so fast. You've got these really short ruins fights, you've got these really short altars fights, and then you've got Kingsland. And if you can't make that day, if you can't make it to Kingsland when Kingsland opens up, if you can't be online ready to play, you are not going to get a lot of kills. And that's exactly what unfortunately has happened to me in this KVK. I'm going to jump in here. Remember, our goal was to get 30 million kills, and we were tracking okay until I couldn't make Kingsland, and unfortunately we ended up at only a sad 9.1 million kills. And it's just really disappointing. Kill total, I really wanted to get a lot more. I couldn't even get to Faith 5, the 25 million kill amount. And there's just really nothing I could do about it because by the time I got online, the fighting was over and we had already started negotiating for peace. And so normally in a KVK, they would come back out, we'd still have more fighting, I'd still have more chances, but there was none. The peace had been negotiated, we had divided up rewards, and this was all the kills I was going to get. Now, luckily for me, I got enough kills in ruins and enough kills in altars that I technically made my KVK contribution percentage to the kingdom, so the kingdom's not mad at me. At least I did my fair share of the fighting. Typically, I make 200, 300, or even 400% of that total, but unfortunately, I couldn't do that this time, which is really sad. And here's an even sadder part. Let's go to Relentless Warriors. This is where you get dead troops back. No dead troops. I didn't take a single dead troop this KVK. That's how sad it is, because when Kingsland only lasts for 8 hours, if you can't be on during that 8-hour period, you don't have a chance to put your troops in a flag. You don't have your chance to put your troops in anywhere to even die. So, and of course, the fighting in ruins, it's kind of silly to have dead troops if you're fighting in ruins. People do it sometimes, but if you just heal down your hospital, you don't take any dead troops in ruins. So, unfortunately, this is a KVK that was really boring and really wasn't that much fun. The reason most people play this game is for the fighting. In KVK2, you have a ton of fighting. In Heroic Anthem, you have a ton of fighting. In Strike of the 8, even KVK1, there's a bunch of fighting. In KVK3, there just isn't that much fighting, and if you can't make it when Kingsland opens up, and the fighting often doesn't last that long. It's kind of like when two real big heavyweight fighters fight, right? You see these fights in movies and the fights last forever and there's a lot of punching back and forth and hitting. Those aren't how real fights go. The way real fights go is one person gets punched and that's it. They're done, they're knocked out. And that's how fights go in Kingsland. When one person gets punched or one kingdom gets punched out, that's it. It's over. The fight's over, nobody else can go on, and that's the end of the fight. And so as soon as one kingdom's punched out, in our case, we only had 2.5 going in there to begin with, it's really hard to keep the fighting going. And so Unfortunately, I didn't make my goals for this KVK, but that's how it goes, I guess. I really think the issue here, though, is KVK3. I will say a couple of positive things about KVK3. One of the positives about KVK3 is if you are a free-to-play or a low spender, it's a great KVK because you really only need one march because you just fight in ruins, you just fight in altars, and you just really only need one good march for that. It's also, there's tons of farming. You spend a huge amount of time farming, not that much time fighting, which again is really good for free-to-play and low spenders to build up their resources, to build up their accounts. But for somebody who really wants to do fighting, for somebody who wants to put 5 effective marches out on the field, KVK3 just doesn't really feel that great. It just really isn't that much fun. I know a lot of people like to migrate back to go to KVK2 because KVK2 is a lot of fun and a lot of people want to go do that KVK2 experience all over again. Unfortunately, if you go migrate to do a KVK2, you're kind of stuck doing a KVK3 because you cannot migrate from KVK2 to a Season of Conquest. The only way to get to a Season of Conquest is to go all the way through a KVK3. Now, you could continue migrating to KVK2s over and over and over again and never play a KVK3, but then you can only play KVK2. You'll never get into a Season of Conquest unless you go through a KVK3. So it's sort of unfortunate you're forced to play this KVK if you don't really want to play it, and again, if you can't really hit these reward targets, but that's how it goes. That's really it for this update. You know, we've got Heroic Anthem coming up. We'll have Season of Conquest. I think we're going to take a little time off. Maybe to do some recruiting, gathering some resources, getting ourselves ready. Also commanders, because the new wheels will come on. We'll be able to get some of these new commanders or work on some of these commanders. I'll show you some examples here. So I have some commanders like, let's see here, like Guan Yu. Like you see the lock on him, I can't use him. I've got him at 5121. I'd like to spin the Guan Yu wheel, get him leveled up before we go into Season of Conquest. I've got commanders like XY 5511. I'd like to level him up before we get into some real Season of Conquest fighting. I've got Tamiris at 5112. I'd like to get some Tamiris sculptures. I'd like to get Ramses. I've got him at 5111. These are commanders I would really like to use in Season of Conquest. You can see Trajan here. I've got 5000. I've got Leonidas unlocked. I'd probably like to get him to 5511 at least. I've got Harold unlocked. I think I'd like to use Harold as well. And so we're going to take some time. We're going to spin some wheels. I'm going to try to show some of that here on this channel. But that's what we're going to be doing for a little while. So look, if you like this video, if you like learning a little bit about KVK3, hit a like, hit the like button below, hit the notification button so you know when I drop a new video, and leave a comment, leave questions, complain about how lame I was this KVK if you want to. I appreciate you all coming by here to listen, and I'll see you all real soon.